Punch you in the face. Because Janet Kuypers is the mother effing shit.
Yes.
I'm a very, very actually peaceful man.
But your mouth packs a mean punch.
But yeah, for real. You all heard an apology, by the way. And
Sorry. Sorry.
we love you all. We are the
do another one
goods.
later, though.
Thank you. And thank you. Zach, man, the sound guy over here, killing it, man. Usually sound people hate us. Thank you.
I don't know how much been said on. Hello. Testing 1, 2. Hi. Hi. Hello. Fascinating intro. You're awesome.
That coat is awesome.
It's very Star Trek-ish, which I've been told, which
Very awesome.
is appropriate for my reading Star Trek pieces.
I don't even like Star Trek.
Well, there's some funny.
I probably should have said that here, huh?
Well, when you're in your sci-fi world, but
Someone's mother's gonna punch
I will first start by saying, as a publisher, I have a couple of chapbooks of select some of the pieces in it, so I'm going to pass 2 to you, please pass back. And I'm going to pass 2 to you. Possibly take one or not, please pass back. I only have 4 of them. I only have 4, I'm sorry.
I can do it.
Because in homage to yes, they are free. Yes, give away because if anybody wants to know anything. And in homage to Patrick Hurley, who used to do things on paper bags, I had old brown paper, which is really tough to print on. So that's why there's only 4. I have no sound effects or anything. I'm just going to read a bunch of pieces and thank you.
I want one, but I guess I don't get one. Esteban got one.
Well, you can read it with them. 2 girls on the hats, you can hang out together. That's awesome. I don't know. I'll give a title, sure. Star Trek, Star Wars, and Stormtroopers. Might as well get it all together here. I heard another episode of Star Trek where they mentioned duranium. So I looked it up online. Duranium is an extremely hard alloy used in our starship hulls and handheld tools. But at the same time, Google listed a slew of links for this elusive duranium. And one of them was not for Star Trek, but for Star Wars. So I followed the link because there's a Wikipedia page site for the Star Wars wiki. And the Revenge of the Sith novel explains that duranium is a stronger element than either transparent steel or bronzium. Yeah, I could go on and on about the details about this imaginary substance, but it just made me laugh when I hear terms used in Star Trek that were also used in Star Wars. Then, of course, my mind went to Star Wars again, because if you don't have science fiction for ideas, you might as well use history itself, because the only difference between stormtroopers and Star Wars was that they wore white versus the Nazi brown-shirt stormtroopers. Because, like the Nazi SS, the brown shirts of the stormtroopers, when they all arrived en masse, it made them all blend into one large force that no one individual could actually flee. I know, stormtroopers in Star Wars cover their faces with their headgear, but that trick may have been the one thing to make the soldiers better than the SS, because they could still say that they were just following orders, and this way it was much harder to identify your enemy when you couldn't even see their face. Thank you. These are very strange collected pieces. This one, because I had been writing poems for the periodic table. Yes, one for everyone. I actually brought the book this time out of the periodic table of poetry here. This one is a bonus one. It is called Nitrium. Everybody's like, what element is that? I've been studying elements in the periodic table, and when I heard the word nitrium, it made me laugh, because I was thinking of laughing gas. So I looked it up online, and the only thing I could find was from the Memory Alpha on the Star Trek wiki, and they could only guess that nitrium was either an alloy or a metallic element. But the history buff in me remembered that nitrium is a variant of natrium, which was the original name for the element sodium. I mean, doctors even call low sodium levels in the blood hyponatremia, even still. So, as I read up on my Star Trek wiki, I suddenly realized how essential this nitrium really was. If you remember basic chemistry, sodium reacts violently with water, disintegrating or even exploding. No, you're thinking of salt, and that's not straight sodium. That's why it mixes with water. You're okay with that one. But as I read, Nitrium, which was the first name of sodium, was prevalent in asteroids and was used in many places in the construction of the Federation starships. Now, when it comes to our own bodies, sodium, or should I say nitrium, controls blood pressure and blood volume. It's essential in our bodies to keep everything running smoothly. So it makes total sense that Galaxy-class starships use nitrium in their ships, from computers to engines to even life support systems. Nitrium was so crucial to the cost of living. You see, I expanded my research from Star Trek Wiki to straight-up Wikipedia, and I discovered that parasites were actually eating the nitrium all over the Enterprise, jeopardizing that ship's integrity. Because, as I've learned, with every periodic table element out there, there's a good side and a bad side. If nitrium is used all over the Enterprise, something could easily go wrong to destroy the ship as well. I mean, think of it. In our own bodies, when sodium, or nitrium, reacts with water, it forms sodium hydroxide. But that reaction gets the hydrogen so hot that it burns. And if nitrium was the original name for sodium, that probably explains why you never see a Galaxy-class starship entering a planet's atmosphere. Because there's water in the air. Because really, the people at Star Trek learned that even a little water in the air would be enough to make the starship disintegrate around them. Really, whenever the Enterprise actually goes to a planet, they never actually land on the planet with their big Galaxy-class starship. They just send a shuttle, or they beam someone down to the planet. Because if this case, that water in the air that's embedded in the atmosphere, that water would react with the sodium, that water would react with the nitrium, and it might actually do the Enterprise in. As I said, with all the elements I've studied, there's a good side and a bad side to them. We might desperately need them, but there also may sometimes be something that'll do us in if they're mixed in just the right way. Because if you sit in a lab in the 21st century, you can watch this element react with water in a beaker. And if you're going where no one has gone before in the 24th century, you might have to be sure that your nitrium-rich ship sees no water in space and finds no parasites that might eat you out of your only way back home. It's very strange. This one, and this is why Imzadi, I've got it for a cover. This one's called Kinds of Interference. Watched an episode of Star Trek recently, where the Borg first transported onto the bridge of the starship Enterprise, and Jean-Luc Picard was then abducted and transported to a cubicle Borg ship. And as soon as they realized that Captain Picard was gone, Commander Riker talked through his little comm badge to Chief O'Brien and asked, "O'Brien, can you beam him back?" And Miles O'Brien responded that he can't, that there's some kind of interference. All O'Brien says, this man who transports people for a living, is that there's some kind of interference. I wonder if that's the kind of interference like when you tell a friend about someone that you've started dating, and at your own party, they leave and make out with your date. I wonder if it's the kind of interference when the one you love calls you and tells you they're going on an airplane on the other side of the planet, but their connecting flight was just canceled, so they won't be able to see you soon. And by the way, this phone call costs over $2 a minute from the other side of the world. That's what you get for getting your hopes up. I wonder if it's the kind of interference like when a week before you're supposed to stand up in a wedding, your significant other tells you that they want to break up, but they understand you're a part of someone else's wedding. They'll tag along, you know, act like your date to not cause any waves for you. I wonder if it's the kind of interference that when you're driving to see your parents, that while stopped at an intersection, you see a car speeding toward you, or it went toward you, or a stopped car. So you turn your car wheels so that the crash won't kill the motorcyclist in front of you. And what they do drops you into a coma for weeks, where at the hospital they put a tube down your throat to breathe for you. You know, that kind of interference. I wonder if it's a kind of interference, like when you're finally off on your own and you feel like you can trust people and someone gets you drunk enough to not fight back when they sexually get off on you. And you later hear of rape rooms and fraternity basements that are rooms with floors literally covered with dingy semen-stained mattresses, you know, in case the girl falls down as soon as they enter the room. You know, that kind of interference. I wonder if it's the kind of interference you get after you questioned your gender preference, started relationships with a few, until one of them, from a one-night stand, gave you the human immunodeficiency virus. After you contracted full-blown AIDS, you cocktailed your way through the world with anything other than liquor, wondering how long you'd live, wondering if you'd ever have or raise kids. You know, that kind of interference. But you know, often when you hear them say on Star Trek that there's some kind of interference, they continue by saying, I don't have a positive lock on the away team. Which makes me think of the times when you want to find the one you love and some kind of interference keeps you away from your chances of finding your one true love. This one is called Uncuffed. I wish I had handcuffs for this, but I don't. So. When I was arrested, they put handcuffs a little too tight around my wrists, behind my back. They put me in the back of their squad car, took me to their headquarters, a little building you can only get to through the off-ramp of the expressway. They sat me down, uncuffed one hand, cuffed the other to the bench. Tried to charm them so I might get off easy. Looking back, I thought it was nothing like the holding cells on the Enterprise, where prisoners are escorted and not handcuffed. They're escorted to a room all their own with a force field for a wall. Well, I must have sweet-talked them. I didn't go to jail. But I imagine prisons aren't as roomy or as clean as they are in a starship like the Enterprise. And prison bars just aren't the same as those force fields. It would have been nice to touch a force field. See what it was like. Did it hurt? It probably would, and would hurt more than those handcuffs. I know I have a dolly lithograph, a cooler one than Kuypers Star Trek's, but I didn't steal it like he did before he stole data, before he was caught. He thought of that holding cell as an exhibit where anyone could walk by and observe him. Like the priceless things we all like to keep and show off. We always want to be the one with the most toys now, don't we? But no matter what century you live in, no matter what fantasy world you live in, getting caught is never an option. You'll only want to be free from that force field, or hope your time will come and you'll be uncuffed. Thank you. I've got my last piece here. Thank you, my darling. This one, a short one. Thank you very much. Thank you, Robin. Thank you all. This one is called Full Stop. When you're driving down the expressway, you see rush hour traffic slowing the lanes down, but you look up and see the car in front of you at a full stop, and a lot closer than you realized. So you slam on your brakes as hard as you can. You feel your car shuddering and screeching until you feel your car rock back from the brakes once you've come to a full stop, just in time. In our short time here on planet Earth, we all understand the concept of a full stop. In the UK, a full stop actually is another term for a period to bring a sentence to a full stop. But in Star Trek, Captain Kirk, Jean-Luc Picard, or even Commander Riker they have all been known to tell their crew to take the Enterprise to a full stop. But I have to ask, in relation to what? In relation to the stellar objects nearby? Because from what I've heard, the universe doesn't sit still, but that everything's expanding away from everything else. Are we at a full stop right here on Earth, when the planet spins and then orbits the sun, and our solar system is at the edge of an arm of the Milky Way galaxy, spinning like mad? And think of it, our own galaxy is speeding away from everything else out there. So what is full stop, I'd have to ask. A full stop in reference to what? Because without a reference point, we're all just moving faster than we can imagine. We'll never stop. But I mean, it feels like we're still. So I guess it's all relative. So if you're in an unmoving line at a grocery store, or if you've turned off the engines of the Enterprise, you can always say that suddenly everything feels like a full stop. Thank you. You want to know what my poetry open mic? Hi, I happen to run a poetry open mic as a gallery cabaret at the Cafe Gallery at Gallery Cabaret. It's a 2020 North place right by Western and Armitage. It's every other week, which means we're not running next week because we just did it last week with Tom Moby as a feature. But our next one happens to be on April Fool's Day.
Yeah.
We actually have 2 features. The first one will be Sid Yiddish and Hinchman doing this
Nice!
performance. And because it's kind of a music thing, I happen to have Dallas Mellis there performing for a feature as well. We do poetry, we do music, we do whatever. It's from 7 till 9 o'clock. If you want to know anything about it, you go to www.chaoticarts.org/thecafe. Or Janet Kuypers on Facebook or whatever. And thank you, and thank you, and thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.